Whatever. Anyway, so last time, orange made my head explode. That's what happened last time. So we come back to another installment of this, where I look at this, I play this, and then I comment on how bad this is and how non-skeptical it is. So he gave this guy 3 oranges. He had him pick an orange. Do you want an orange, or an orange? I want the orange. You can take them all. By the way, don't eat them. They're bad. Why? Why did he do this? Because he wanted to make a point. What point did he want to make? The choice, like no choice isn't a choice, but actually, technically, the guy did have a choice. The choice between 3 different oranges, because the oranges are technically different. Yeah, they're all an orange, but they're still different. So free will, because of choice, then bad stuff. Okay, so why not have a world where you can only choose what is good? And his answer to that is, if you can only choose what's good, then all you can choose is oranges. I mean, you don't have a choice. If the only choice is good choice, then you don't really have a choice. Which means in heaven, there is no free will. Because if there's free will, then the choice that you make will make bad stuff happen. But no bad stuff can happen in heaven. So therefore, there can't possibly be choice in heaven. All you could ever choose from is oranges in heaven. Heaven is a fucking orange. It's a giant orange in the sky somewhere that's invisible and intangible, and it's also outside space and time, because that's how it works. Why not? Orange it's the color orange, and Trump is there because he's orange, and every it reminds me of this person I knew that was orange, and they lived in an orange world, and all day and all night everything they had was orange, like him, inside and out. It was orange. Anyway, so I guess if free choice equal bad, then no free choice equal good. But you have to have free choice, because that, if you didn't have it, then it was bad. But if you don't, and then, so then,
they're bad. Okay. Did I actually offer Ben a choice? A forced choice isn't really a choice, is it? Someone else, you're out there and you're thinking, well, what makes choice so important in the first place? Why does God have to give us the ability to choose? Now, let me say this. If we didn't have the ability to choose our own path, these same people would be complaining by saying, if God's so powerful, then why can't he let us make our own decisions? What's God afraid of? But
no, because if you didn't have a choice, then you couldn't complain.
Putting that aside, it's a question that deserves to be answered. Why is choice so important? This is crucial to understand. Choice is important because God created you to experience the highest possible good. God wants nothing less than the absolute best for you. Well, what is the absolute best? What is the highest possible good? The highest possible good is God himself. God is the greatest conceivable being. And that means God's very nature is the greatest conceivable concept. He is the greatest thing you can conceive of. If you can conceive of a being better than God, then that being is God.
Okay. Well, I guess I've created a new God just now, and again. This whole conceive of greater being thing never really works for me, at any rate. The greatest possible being I can conceive of would be the one that reveals itself to all humanity at the same time in such a way that nobody is confused. That would be pretty great. But that's not the God that you posit. Therefore, the God that you posit can't possibly be God because the God that I posited is greater. But how do we measure greatness? What system do we utilize to determine what is a great being? And how do we know that we've reached the greatest conceivable thing that we can conceive? And just because we can conceive it, that doesn't make it real. But at any rate, if God is the ultimate in good and all God wants is for you to choose it because it is the greatest thing that you could choose, okay, great. But then what other choice could there be? Great, awesome thing or not? Then there really isn't a choice. Why would you ever not choose the greatest, awesomest thing ever possible? Why would you ever choose anything but that? So you would have to have some flaw built into the system that would make you want to not choose the greatest possible thing ever. So you have to be some sort of internal flaw built into you from the very start so that you could possibly choose other than the greatest good. But remember, he said a false choice is not a real choice, and I actually agree. So if you are held at gunpoint and you are told to do something or not to do something, you're probably going to do it because you value your life, and the gun implies that you're going to get killed if you don't cooperate. So the person that's holding you at gunpoint say, "Give me your money," you're probably going to give them your money because your money is less valuable than your life. And so if this deity is saying, choose the best thing or else, then that's really not a choice. It's essentially the gun robber saying, look, give me all your money or I'll kill you. But on the other hand, if you do give me all your money, I'll love you forever and I'll give you all this other stuff. It's like, well, wait a minute, what? the appeal to bribe doesn't make the appeal to threat any less invalid. And the appeal to bribe is also invalid as far as logic goes. So saying, hey, look, I'm going to give you a gigantic mansion, free of charge, no tax involved. You will own it forever. It will be part of your family's legacy from here on out. You can do whatever you want with it. You can sell it if you want, whatever. I don't know. But it's yours. And all you have to do is kiss my foot. Literally, just kiss my foot. Either foot's fine. That's all you have to do. Now, you're probably going to kiss my foot. Why? Because you want the mansion. But I haven't given you a logically valid reason to do it. I've given you an emotional reason, an appeal to a bribe, a logical fallacy. And I, as a non-purely logical being, well, yeah, I might do that occasionally. And so might somebody else. But if God is supposedly the supreme thing, then wouldn't it have supreme logic? And if it had supreme logic, then how could it ever use illogic at all at any point ever? If the choice is God or not God, good or screwed, that's not a real choice. A real choice would be this, and this. So good, or this good, like the three oranges. Like, okay, if you don't like this version of God, this ultimate goodness, maybe you'll like this ultimate version of goodness, or this ultimate version of goodness. Hey, that's the Trinity. Well, that's why he had three oranges. I think I understand his argument now. No, I don't.
God is the greatest conceivable being. By the way, God's not an egomaniac. This explains the whole worship concept. I used to wonder, God, why do you command us to worship you? Like if I stood up here and said, ladies and gentlemen, worship me. You'd think, wow, Darren's got a bit of an issue. Well, why is it wrong for me to do that, but it's okay for God to do that? Why does he command us to worship him? Because God is the greatest conceivable being. And if you focus on anything less than him, it will ruin your life. You'll be settling for less than the absolute best. So God says, listen, I am by nature the perfect being, the greatest conceivable being, and I want the best for you. And so for me to allow you to focus your life or direct your life or pursue anything less than my nature would be to destroy you and to give you less than the best. So God isn't some, some weak or struggling being, and insecure is the word I was searching for. He's not some insecure being up there going, worship me, everybody, love me, love me. No, he's the greatest conceivable being. He doesn't need us. He is perfect in himself. He doesn't need our worship. He didn't need to create us. He wasn't lonely. Yet he's saying, I am the greatest conceivable being, and I want the best for you, and my nature is what is best. So focus upon me. Stay focused on me. Anything less will lead to your destruction.
This idea of God is incoherent, I must say. But that's okay. God can be incoherent because God is whatever you want it to be, I guess. But you're saying that God doesn't need anything, but he made us. Why would he make us? He made us so that we would focus on him, which is what worship is. No, I don't know about that, but it's for our good that we worship. Anything less is not good. Okay, then you don't really have a choice. It is orange or dead. Those are your choices. It's good or not good. Why would you? It doesn't make any coherent sense to say that you have an actual choice when the options are so limited. I have plenty of options that can be called or considered good options, and plenty of options that are bad options. I can eat an entire jar of peanut butter at one as much as I can in one sitting. Probably a bad idea. Probably going to get sick. That's a bad option. Or maybe I could eat a little bit of it, and I'll enjoy that, to some extent. But maybe a better option would be salad, as far as a healthy decision goes or whatever. But you still have options within the good options. This is why his orange thing completely, utterly fails, is the choices aren't limited to one choice. There are multiple good choices you can make. But here, the only good choice you can make is that one choice. So that's it. God is the most greatest conceivable orange that you choose, because why would you ever not choose that? Which means, again, that in paradise, in heaven, there can't be free will because there would be no other choice. In fact, there never was any other choice than God. So how did humans screw this up? How is it that it's humanity's fault when God knew going in that humans would choose bad? But how and why would they ever choose bad? So the only way to make the story make any sense is that the humans are just created stupid. They are. Adam and Eve, the classic story, don't have the knowledge of good and evil, although this depends on your theology heavily. But okay, they don't know what's right and wrong. They just know that God told them to do something. They don't do the thing that God tells them, that God tells them not to do this one thing. They do that one thing, and then God's like, well, you turned away from me, therefore bad stuff's going to happen from now on. forever for everybody, not just you guys, but for everybody. Okay, because that makes sense. Doesn't explain animal suffering, other than, it doesn't explain a lot of things, but okay, whatever. So the reason that they're suffering, again, in his view, is that for some bizarre, unexplained reason, humanity is able to choose something other than the best possible thing ever. And again, how could you ever make that choice? Why would you ever make that choice unless you are built with some flaw where some other choice seems preferable to the ultimate good? So God then created humanity with a deliberate flaw, which means God isn't all good, unless this concept of God is wrong. So that could be the case. Maybe his version of God is simply not the actual God. But that would require critical thinking and analysis, something that he's not engaged in right now. And as far as an explanation to why there is suffering and evil, this is pretty darn pathetic. It's basically because humans choose to not focus entirely on God. But we can easily falsify this. Take the most devoted person that you can find in the entire world and see if their life is free from suffering. They could be fully focused on God, completely and utterly devoted, memorize the entire Bible, live by all 613 commandments just in case, and still their life could have suffering in it. But how? How could that be the case if they're doing everything to focus on God and do what God wants? And the reason that bad stuff happens is because you lose focus on God. Then how could it possibly be that that person wouldn't experience a paradise here on earth? Oh, well, because there's other people that do bad stuff, right? So those other bad stuff, those influence your life, even though you're doing everything that's good. So the damn system doesn't make any sense. Back to oranges.
And God's very nature is love. You were created to eternally experience the purest love imaginable. And this highest level of love is experienced through a relationship with the very source of love, this greatest conceivable being, God himself. For you to experience the highest possible good, for you to experience this purest love imaginable, you must be able to choose. Why? Because love cannot be forced upon someone. Love cannot be programmed into someone, because love is a choice. That's why.
Is it though? No, seriously. Is love an actual choice? I don't know. I really don't. I think this is another case of black and white thinking, of false dichotomies and lack of nuance. Remember, we're looking at this as if the course is titled correctly, which it obviously isn't. This course has nothing to do with skepticism. But had it actually to do with skepticism, and say I was giving this course, because basically this series is me giving you the real version of this course, although I wouldn't be doing it about God. It's just orange. Okay, so that fixes everything. Just my brain.
You can program your computer every morning when you wake up to say, I love you.
Oh, right. Love isn't a choice. Okay, thank you. That's all I needed. Okay, so, or love is a choice or whatever. No, I don't. Maybe not completely. Okay, if you are, if you ever have a kid, it's just immediate, instant love. There is no choice there. You see the kid. You hold the kid. You love that kid. There is no process in your brain that allows you to choose to not love the kid. And maybe you're saying, well, but women have abortions, so there's something. Well, but that's before the kid is born. Before, once they have the kid, they love the kid. It's like, that's why adoption isn't a solution per se for people that don't want kids. Like we say no to abortions, completely illegal. Okay, we'll just put it up for adoption. No, because the mother is like instantly like attached to that being, and usually so is the father to some degree. Okay, there's something there chemically imbued in our brains because of evolution and stuff that we don't have any control over. Now, over time, maybe you do gain the ability to decide to not love your kid somehow. I don't know how that could be. But I don't see any evidence for that. Do you really choose who you fall in love with? I don't think so. I think that again is some sort of subconscious process that you have certain preferences and certain things that your brain locks into. You don't have any choice over that. If you really could choose who to love, then you could decide to arbitrarily love anyone, and why stop at people, anything that you wanted. So you could say, I love the frog. Let's love the frog today. I love this. Do you? Well, if you have the ability to just love something, then love this immediately, instantly. And then, since you have the ability to choose to love, you could just choose to stop loving it. But you're unable to do that because it's not something that humans can do. If it could be done, we could just choose to love, to clean our house. And then we could choose to stop loving that because we're done cleaning. So we don't need to love it anymore. It at no level does any of this actually make sense or correspond to reality. You don't have a choice to be able to love or not love somebody, something. Not, at least not to the degree that he seems to be suggesting. But the system that he's positing does demand that you love this being. If you don't love this being, then terrible, horrible things will happen to you. So that's a false choice. You don't love me, I will kill you. Well, I guess I have to love you because I don't want to die. If you don't love me, I will torture you forever. That is not a choice. Given that, most sane, rational people, but no, I don't want to be tortured forever. I'm going to do everything I can to try to love you, to force myself to love you because I am scared of the torture. Or maybe you say, well, the torture's not there. That's the hell thing. Forget about that, Deco Verban. That's not real. But okay, then the pleasure is offered. Look at how wonderful and amazing it's going to be if you only love me. That's still highly narcissistic. Even if it's true, it's like, I'm the greatest thing ever. Love me. Woo! Well, if you're so great, then I don't have a choice but to love you. But free will then is the ability to decide that I'm not going to love the greatest thing that there could be to love. But how could I ever not love that? So maybe the secret of free will is it's the ability to not do what makes sense. Which means that free will is a defect, not a feature.
You can even have this sexy voice make it say, I love you. But I got news for you. Your computer doesn't love you. You can't program love. You can't force love. Love in its purest and highest form is a choice. It's a decision of the will. And when we choose to love, we are achieving and experiencing the highest possible good. However, when we choose to reject love, we are creating evil. And evil produces suffering. Are you seeing it? In order to experience the highest possible good, we must have a world with free choices. And in order to experience the highest possible good, you must have creatures that can freely choose. And having creatures that can freely choose means having creatures that can possibly choose to reject and to rebel. And to reject and to rebel is to create evil. And to evil produces suffering.
Okay, I already covered my version of this, but let's go ahead and tentatively grant this nonsense. Okay, fine. Why so much evil and suffering then? Why so much? Why would it be so great? Why is it that me rejecting God causes a tsunami? Because tsunamis are pretty bad news for a lot of people. So obviously, the tsunami that's going to create suffering for people, even though there's naturalistic explanations for the tsunami, ultimately, the real reason why there's tsunamis is because I didn't do what God wanted me to do. I rejected God. Okay, maybe not just me, because that's not enough to create a tsunami. Maybe it's a number of people that have to reject God before a tsunami is created because of the rebellion of so many souls against God, that's just what happens. Okay, but why? Why wouldn't it be just to every individual that the bad thing would happen to them and only them, and that they could see clearly that this is a direct result of not doing the thing that they ought to do? Why mask it? Why put it mysteriously behind things? Why cover it in tsunamis or volcano eruptions or earthquakes or whatever? Why make it disease or breaking a limb? Why not make it obvious? Why not have it be the same bad thing every time? Why make it different bad things? Why make it extraordinary punishments or extraordinary bad things? Or is it that we're to believe that God has no control over what negative thing happens, just that something bad will happen? And God has no control over what that bad thing is, but that the moment that anybody rebels, something bad happens at some point. Does it happen immediately after? I don't know. Now, technically, as a skeptic, as an atheist, I'm in constant rebellion against God. I look deliberately for ways sometimes to piss off God just because I can, and there's no God to piss off, so I'm not really worried about it. I'm like, hey, screw you, Holy Spirit. Fuck you, Holy Spirit. I committed the blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. Looking around, nothing bad's happening. I am suffering, but I was suffering before I insulted God. So what suffering can I expect to happen? Or is it that my rebellion is going to cause somebody else to suffer? But why would that be? So even if I grant it, the amount of suffering, the multitude of sufferings that happen, the wide variety and scope of suffering don't make sense for the rebellion. Now, look, we have limited lives here on Earth. You know, some people are, make it to, I think, I want to say 110, but I'm not sure about that. But there's getting some old people up in there. We haven't really hit the 200-year-old mark yet. And of course, science is trying to figure out ways for us to actually remain young and live longer, etc. But for most of us, we're gonna live, I don't know, 80s, 90s, if we're lucky. Some of us not as much. Other people, very short lives. Some lives are going to be filled with pleasure, others with sorrow, others a mixed bag, right? We have some sort of control over that to some limited extent, a very limited extent. If you break the law, you're going to have some problems more than likely. Even if you go along with the law, you're still going to have problems. It's extraordinary what life is in terms of what control you ultimately have over your own life. Like, you have limited resources, you have limited skill sets. Yeah, you can improve on those maybe, but that all depends on you and deciding to and learning how to, and it's difficult. It's not easy. And all of that, then, we're going to add on to this idea that all the bad stuff, all the horrible stuff that happens is because you're not focusing enough on God, or that somebody else isn't focusing enough on God. And that's why all the bad stuff happens. That's why you get toothaches. That's why you why you break limbs. That's why you get scars that never heal. That's why you stubbed your toe. That's why there was an earthquake that killed 1,000 some odd people. That's why that mass shooting happened. All because people didn't focus on God. Why? We just need to bring back prayer to school and there won't be any more school shootings. That sort of mentality. But then the coherent choice would be to force everybody to do that. Force everyone to focus on God all the time. Because then that would stop the suffering. Yet the suffering persists. It persists in spite of people trying to follow God. 33%, give or take, of the world is Christian. Shouldn't we see at least 33% of the world not suffering? No, because following God doesn't get rid of the suffering. How is it that within this short span of life that we have here on this planet, that my little bit of rebellion against God causes this sort of chaos? God is eternal. It lives forever and ever. It has no lifespan like I have. It does, it's just 1 trillion plus years old. In fact, it is no years old because it's always existed. What? And it's like, oh, you did the bad thing. Well, now bad stuff has to happen because it doesn't. It is so incoherent that even granting it falls apart on its face. A all-powerful good being doesn't need my obedience. Me doing something that is not in line with that goodness couldn't ever be not good if a universe was made where only good exists. But this particular version of God is so inept that it's unable to make such a universe. So instead, you're given a false choice between doing good or rebelling. And rebelling, no matter how little it is, apparently has massive consequences for everyone and everything because reasons.
So it is entirely rational to argue that in order to achieve the highest possible good, it's actually necessary to allow for the possibility of evil and suffering. Okay, That addresses the suffering as a result of human choices, what's commonly referred to as moral evil. But that's not the only form of suffering that takes place. What about the suffering that isn't the result of human choices? What about the suffering tied to earthquakes and tsunamis and tornadoes? This is what philosophers refer to as natural evil. As your outline says, number 2, natural evil is sourced in the natural world that operates according to natural laws. Natural evil is sourced in a natural world that operates according to natural laws. So all the suffering that flows from it is rooted in this natural world. Now let's unpack this a bit. You and I live and interact with one another on a set stage of reality. Think of your life as a drama, and the physical universe is the stage upon which this drama of your life is being played out. You and I live and interact with one another on a stage that's so dependable, so reliable, and so predictable that we actually take it for granted. In fact, this stage, this world, this universe is so dependable, so reliable, so predictable that we talk about it in terms of laws. We call them laws of nature. We have the law of gravity, laws of physics, laws of chemistry, laws of mathematics. By a law, we mean a reality that is dependable, that's predictable, a dynamic that always acts the same way. But when we use the term law, we're using it in a descriptive, not a prescriptive manner. You say that.
No. So, again, here would be a good time for some fucking citations, Pastor. Don't just tell. Now, there are times when you can decide what a word means and then give a definition, and everyone, for the sake of your argument, has to agree to your definition, or at least to be able to understand your argument. This is not one of those times. You're talking about the word law being applied to gravity, etc. And how that's used scientifically is very different than what you're saying. What you're saying is a very low resolution version of how to understand the concept of law within science. Instead of doing that, why not, you've got a screen behind, you've got a thing behind you. You could write there, you could have a projector, you could do something that would show what law actually means in science, and then explain it to the best of your ability. And perhaps that will be a very watered down version of like what you're doing now, but why do that? Why not make it sophisticated? I mean, it is a complex thing, so use complicated language to explain it. It's a complicated idea. I don't have enough time and energy. Well, okay, I have enough energy and enough time. I don't feel like explaining law in this video. That will be a callback later to when I return to this point and decide to explain law anyways.
That again. When we use the term law, we're using it in a descriptive, not prescriptive manner. By that I mean we use it to describe the way things actually behave, not the way they ought to behave. Natural laws describe how things do behave. They don't prescribe how things should behave. We don't say, oh, okay, marker, you're under arrest because when I dropped you, you didn't follow the rate of 10 meters per second, so you're under arrest. No, laws don't prescribe what should happen. They describe what does happen. So then, you and I live and interact with one another on a set stage of reality with dependable laws and constraints. When you came in this evening, you sat down on your chair. You didn't look for a seat belt to hold you down. You don't worry that you're suddenly going to float off to the ceiling. Why? Because the law of gravity is dependable. It's reliable. It's your friend. The law of gravity is your friend unless you're falling from an airplane. without a parachute. Then suddenly, this reliable friend becomes an unforgiving enemy. Do you see the dilemma? Do you see the tension that we live in on this set stage of our universe? What is positive can also be negative, and the same thing can be both positive and negative at the same time. At the moment that that guy is falling from the airplane without a parachute, gravity is negative to him. But at that very same moment, that very same gravity is a positive thing to the billions of people who are on the surface of the earth at that moment.
It's not the fall that kills you. It's the sudden stop, you idiot. It's the ground or the water. It's the object that you go smashing into that kills you because your body is not made to withstand the impact. But you could have made the body in such a way that it survives the impact. If you observe an ant falling down from a great height, as it eventually reaches what's called terminal velocity. And an amazing thing happens. The ant will, after hitting terminal velocity, it will eventually hit something solid, and the ant will get up and walk away like nothing happened. The same happens with many insects of all different sorts. Why are they able to get up and walk away after falling from great heights at terminal velocity? But if I reach terminal velocity and I hit something, I'm probably dead. Well, because I'm not an insect shape, nor am I an insect size. But if I created the universe, then I could make it that the laws did things that made sense, but still applied in a way that made it so that I don't get hurt in that way. In fact, there's no reason that a human couldn't be an ant in that universe. So you can make a creature that is able to survive any height fall and not get hurt. But you can't make a creature that can't do that every time? Are you stupid? Hello? Why are we not all creatures that can survive great falls? If the universe is created by an entity that has knowledge and wisdom and ideas like ours but greater than ours, then it would follow that that thing would make things in a way that would be to the best of the best that you could make it. So, you could make it that when anything falls, it doesn't get hurt if you wanted to make it that way. And if it's about the size of the thing, then just make everything small. There are some creatures that, if they get stepped on, they walk off like nothing happened. Because their exoskeleton is such that they can withstand impacts of extraordinary magnitude. Then why not make everything like that? Jellyfish, questionably, are immortal, just about. Why not make everything into fucking jellyfish? Oh yeah, jellyfish also don't really seem to care about a lot of stuff, what you do to them. So why not make things that way? The natural world, with its natural laws, were designed, supposedly, by your God. God set up the rules to the universe. And those rules, you say, can be good, but also can be bad. Just make them always good. Duh. And by the way, it wouldn't be that difficult to have a Earth-type planet that had no gravity, but where everything just floated. It didn't float off the planet, but it just hovered in midair, if you will. And then, you'd have other things to worry about, but gravity wouldn't be one of them because gravity doesn't have to be a thing. If I can conceive of such a universe, surely your God could have created such one. Anyway, so what's a law in science? Let's go to that. Remember I said that would be a thing later on? Yeah, well, now it's the time for that thing. Let's see if I can pull it up here. All right, so here's one thing. This is from livescience.com. Let's see. So, in general, scientific law is the description of observed phenomenon. Doesn't explain why the phenomenon exists or what causes it. The explanation of a phenomenon is called a scientific theory. It's a misconception that theories turn into laws with enough research. In science, laws are a starting place, said Peter Kopperberg, an associate professor of biology and biomedical engineering at the Royal Human Institute of Technology. From there, scientists can ask the question why and how. All right, that's one version. All right, that was way too tiny on the screen. My bad. There it is. Whatever. Link will be in the description later. Whatever, I guess. And then, of course, you guys just turn to Wikipedia if you're really lazy, I suppose, and look at what it says there about scientific laws. Let's see if it's anything close to what he said. Their statements based on repeated experiments or observations that describe or predict a range of natural phenomena. No, that doesn't sound like anything he said at all, not even a little bit. So his explanation of law was really, really crap. But that doesn't surprise me. Orange, orange, orange. Orange, 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 fucking orange. Why would the natural... Wait, I'm not done yet. Why would the natural world cause pain and suffering? Because the laws sometimes make it that way. Why do the laws sometimes make it that way? Did God not have a choice but to make it this way? I don't know. It just seems like your God's inept and stupid. Yeah, actually, that sounds about right.
As we're recording this evening, it's just been, a week, a little over a week since Kobe Bryant's tragedy. As the reports that I read said that the crash happened, I think, 9:52 a.m., somewhere in there. Now, here's the thing. I knew exactly where I was at 9:52 a.m. I was sitting on the balcony of our main auditorium. One of our staff was speaking, and I was there critiquing. And I actually looked at my watch to see what time and how much time was left in the presentation, and it was 9:52. Now, here's the thing. At that moment, gravity was my friend. It was holding me down in that balcony. At that very moment, gravity was the enemy to everyone on that helicopter. Same gravity, same moment, same planet, same time. Low interest rates are fantastic if you're starting out and trying to buy a home. Low interest rates are terrible if you're retired and trying to live off your savings and your investments. What is positive can also be negative at the same time. We live in a world of cause and effect, and sometimes the effects are wonderful and sometimes the effects are painful. Such is the reality of living in a natural world. Now, again, I can hear someone saying, you're thinking to yourself, you're very loud thinkers, by the way. You're thinking, but couldn't God create a world where negative effects don't exist? Couldn't God create a world where all negative effects are immediately overridden and turned into wonderful effects? A fist immediately turns into a feather when you try to punch someone. The sound waves cease to function if you try to curse someone or say something negative. Yes, that's not logically impossible. God could create such a world, but such a world would be madness. It would be a place where real choices from the real you could never be expressed or experienced. Because as your outline says, a world without real choices requires a world without real consequences. A world without real choices requires or produces a world without real consequences.
So heaven can't be a real place then, because there's no consequences in heaven anymore, right? That would make hell the only real place. Actually, no, hell wouldn't be a real place either because it's all consequence and no anything else. So God had no choice but to make it such that the universe had consequences to it, regardless of if people did what God wanted or not. But you're saying a physical universe. So a non-physical universe doesn't have to have these rules. That's why heaven is allowed to have the different rules that it has. Then why not put us there? Because reasons? But why can't God make a consequence-free universe? Well, because then you wouldn't really have choices. You have to have consequences to have choices. It's dizzying when you try to make sense of it. Just like the however you say that damn dilemma. Stop talking about it in chat. It's distracting. Focus on the stupid video. Orange! Orange!
Why is there evil and suffering in our world? We've seen that there are perfectly rational reasons for permitting the presence of evil and suffering. We've seen that achieving the highest good requires the presence of choice. We've seen that the presence of choice requires the possibility of evil, and we've seen that living in a world of natural laws that make science possible, by the way, requires living in a world with real consequences, and not all those consequences will be enjoyable. Now, these answers speak to the mind. These answers are entirely plausible and rational, but these answers rarely satisfy the heart.
Those answers aren't even answers. The reason that there's pain and suffering is because God made a universe where pain and suffering is able to be a thing. And then also made it that your choice to not choose God would bring more pain and suffering. So on top of the pain and suffering that exists already in the universe, regardless of whether you obey God or not, then there's more pain and suffering that comes into existence because you're not obeying God.
My experience in participating in debates and witnessing debates with atheists, we'll say, is atheists, my opponents, tend not to appeal to the mind when they address this issue of suffering and evil. They tend to appeal to the heart. They would say on this podium, if this God exists, how could this loving God allow such things? And they will talk of the Holocaust, and they will talk of children drowning. They'll talk about tsunamis and so on. They'll show pictures, and they'll say, why would a loving God allow this to happen? Where is God, this so-called God, when these terrible things happen? Years ago, I remember the moment like it just happened. Good friends of mine, I won't name their names because this is being taped, but they were good friends of mine, my wife and I, and we had a small group together. We met in our home every week and studied together. And this couple were going through some marital difficulties and so on. And in fact, this gentleman, personally, I had prayed with him and led him to become a follower of Jesus.
This is so
He
boring.
had some serious issues, some serious troubles in his background, but he was seeking to change his life and make a new start. He's a
Get to the point.
Successful businessman, had his own business with a few different stores that he ran in the area where we lived at the time. And him and his wife had recently become married, and they were going through some marital difficulties. Long story short, after speaking with him on a Tuesday evening, he called me about helping him with this marriage problem. I spoke with him, and that's the last time I ever chatted with him. Because the next day, I got a call and was informed that he lured his wife into their basement, put a gun to her head, killed her, put the gun to his own head, and killed himself.
So what you're telling me is you're really, really bad marriage counselor. I mean, the guy was having some marriage problems. Went to the pastor. Hey, help me out, pastor. All right, here's some ideas, whatever. Your advice is so bad, I'm gonna kill my wife and then myself. That's how bad of a marriage counselor this guy is. Even if this story is true, how can I come to a different conclusion than that? Why would you use this story as an example? What are you doing? It doesn't. Oh my word.
After performing both of their funerals, they were both my friends, I was then in the basement of that home where it happened with the father of the deceased woman. And he and I were kneeling on the floor, painting over the spot where his daughter had been murdered. Painting over the stains, painting over the chalk marks and drawings from the police. And him and I were talking.
Okay, now I know you're lying. Now I absolutely know that you're lying. I absolutely have zero doubt that you are lying about this story. And you might say, Deacon Ferdinand, how in the hell would you know that? Because I heard a murder take place right outside my door. it was a couple, what was it, last year before now? I don't know. Anyways, a while back. Really horrible. Didn't enjoy listening to that. It was very scary hearing gunshot and hearing somebody cry out, "Oh God, don't take him!" And it was messed up. Okay, but the aftermath was a bunch of police showed up and investigated, and they had up the tape and they had the thing, and then you took pictures and da 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 da. And I saw one of the policemen get a shovel, take some dirt, and put it on the road because that's where some blood had been splattered from the guy that got shot in his head. Ooh. So, although that effort to clean up isn't very good, perhaps, it did show me that the police clean up after some event happens. If they draw shock outlines, which I think that's more of a TV trope than an actual thing. Usually they just take pictures because drawing a shock outline would disturb the scene and introduce particles and stuff to the scene, and they want to keep the scene as pristine as they can to collect evidence. So if there had been shock outline, which would be extraordinarily unusual, I think, they would have cleaned it up. Also, they would have cleaned up the blood. So, you're lying. This event didn't take place. It didn't happen. End of story. So everything else that you're going to tell us is just complete fiction. Unless you're saying that the police didn't clean up their mess, in which case they should have been sued, and we would have heard something about it. Actually, you know what? Here's a great example of being a skeptic. And instead of just telling us the story, somebody got murdered. In fact, there was a homicide followed by a suicide. That would have made the news. Show us the news clip. Show us the paper that has that story. Show us the obituary. You can blank out the names and location, but then we'd have evidence that this actually occurred. You're not going to provide that, though, because you don't have that evidence, because the story is completely made up. If you want us to believe your story, then you could have easily had the reports from that event on screen. You could have said, here's the newspaper article. That's more impactful, by the way. Not only now I have visual evidence that this story really happened. So I know it's an actual event and not just something that you're making up like you are, you lying sack of shit. Now, I have planned to maybe talk to this idiot at some point. I don't know that's going to happen. He's not listening to me anyway, so I can say whatever the hell I want about this nitwit. But I am going to ask him of evidence of this event. He's not going to produce it, and then he's going to make excuses to us why he doesn't have that evidence. That's my prediction, if he ever talks to me, which I don't know that he will. Anyways.
As we were painting. Now, as we knelt together on that floor, painting and talking, that grieving father didn't need his mind to be answered. He needed his heart to be assured. And that brings us to the other aspect of answering this question. After first addressing the mind, we're now going to be, as your outline says, addressing the heart. Addressing the heart.
All right, well, it's that time, friends. It's that time when I've run out of time. I'm done. I actually went an hour this time. Last time I didn't because of fucking orange. So how do you address the heart that's an organ in your body that pumps blood and has no emotion? Oh, he pointed to heart. He pointed to his chest. This is where all emotion takes place, nitwit. We've known this for centuries. Ah! All right, anyways. So I guess we'll get to that next time in part, whatever the hell part I'm on, anyways, where I'm going to name it Heartbreak or Orange Heart, or I don't know what I'll name it. I'll figure it out when I do it. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'll even bring in somebody else to help me. I don't know. Who knows what could happen? Join in next time when it happens, whenever that is. I don't schedule things, so you won't know unless you subscribe and hit the bell and like the video. And yes, I appreciate that you said things in chat, but none of that matters for YouTube because YouTube doesn't see what you do in chat. YouTube used to put what was on chat on the screen, but now it doesn't show up anymore for some reason. I don't know what the hell's going on. If that's SteamYard or if it's YouTube or if it's both, I don't know. I don't know what thing to press. Anyways, take your comments, put them in the comment section of YouTube below this video of. It doesn't even matter what you say. I don't care what you say. You can say anything you want. You could debate each other about things that have nothing to do with the video, like you were doing in chat. Pretty much, that's what you were doing. You were all debating about something that was tangentially related to the video, kind of, and was making me go crazy. You could debate that in the comment section, and if you do that, it helps me. It helps me because YouTube then notices me. But you're not gonna do it because you don't want to notice me and you don't care. Well, then if you do it, then you do that. But then if you don't have a choice and you have a choice, and then the choice is a choice, and then the thing, like the video, forget to subscribe, don't like the button. See you next time.